The teller said it twice before I let myself hear it. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Whitfield, that transfer request has been declined." I was holding a paper coffee cup that had gone cold in my hand, and I remember thinking, isn't that strange? I don't even remember buying this. I didn't cry. I just stood there and let her say it twice. "My name is Grace Whitfield. I'm 68 years old, and for 32 years I sat on the other side of a desk just like the one that woman was sitting behind. I was a loan officer, then a branch manager. I have signed my name to more denials and more approvals than most people sign birthday cards in a lifetime. I know what a declined transfer looks like from both chairs. What I didn't expect, at 68, widowed 3 years, standing in the lobby of a bank I used to help run policy for, was to find out my own daughter-in-law had tried to move $81,000 out of an account with my name on it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. Tuesday came gray and steady, the kind of March morning where the sky can't decide if it wants to rain. That was 2 weeks before the bank. I want you to understand who I was before any of this started, because the woman who stood in that lobby wasn't born there. She'd been building for a long time, one quiet year at a time. I met my husband Walter when I was 23, working my first month at First Sequoia Credit Union. He came in to open a savings account for his little sister's college fund, and he wore his tie like it was borrowed from someone taller. We were married 11 months later. He drove a delivery route for 30 years, 6 days a week, and every single Friday he came home and put his check on the kitchen table without opening the envelope. "You're better with numbers than I am," he'd say. "Always have been." I built our whole life on spreadsheets nobody else ever saw. Retirement accounts. A mortgage paid off 9 years early. A rainy day fund that outlasted more rainy days than I can count. We had one son, Daniel. I raised him mostly on my own in the practical sense, because Walter worked 6 days and I worked 5, and somehow between us we made it look easy, though it never was. Daniel was a gentle boy. Not weak, not back then, just easy. He avoided a fight the way some people avoid a hot stove, on instinct, without thinking about what he was walking away from. I used to think that was a virtue. I've since learned it can also be a hiding place. Walter passed 3 years ago. Heart, sudden, no long goodbye, which some people call a blessing and I have never once called a blessing. He left me a house that was paid for, a modest pension, and one account he'd been quietly building since before Daniel was born. An account he used to call Grace's parachute, half joking, half not. $81,000, give or take, sitting untouched, meant for nothing in particular and everything in case. I want to be honest with you. I liked my daughter-in-law when I first met her. Chelsea was sharp, funny in a dry way, ambitious about the right things, or so I thought. She and Daniel married 4 years ago, and for a while I told myself the small comments were just her way of joking about money. The way some families joke about weather. By Friday of that same week, I remembered the Christmas of 2019, the first one after Walter died. We were clearing dishes and Chelsea picked up one of Walter's coffee mugs, turned it over like she was pricing it, and said, "You know, once you're settled somewhere smaller, a lot of this can go. No sense holding on to a big house just for yourself." I told her I liked my big house. She smiled the way people smile when they've already decided the conversation isn't over, just paused. The summer of 2021 came next in my memory, clearer than it should have been. Daniel and Chelsea were over for a cookout, and I overheard her on the phone with her sister in my own backyard, not even trying to lower her voice. "It's basically going to be ours eventually anyway," she said. "I mean, who else is she leaving it to?" I stood at my own grill with a spatula in my hand and said nothing, because I told myself I'd misheard the tone if not the words. Then there was the spring after that, 18 months ago now, when Chelsea sat across from me at my own kitchen table, my chair, the one Walter used to sit in across from her, and said, without any wind-up at all, "Grace, have you thought about putting Daniel on some of your accounts? Just for convenience. In case anything ever happens." I asked her what she thought was going to happen. She said, "You're not getting younger." That was the whole sentence. For words of concern wrapped around a demand. Each of those moments, on their own, I could explain away. People say clumsy things. Grief makes families strange. But that's not one bad day. That's a pattern, and patterns don't apologize for themselves. They just keep showing up wearing a different outfit. 2 weeks before the bank, on that gray Tuesday, I was standing in my kitchen doing something I've done every week since Walter died. Reconciling the accounts, the way I used to reconcile a whole branch's ledger before lunch. My kitchen window was cracked for air, and it happens to sit almost directly above the side porch, which carries sound in a way I don't think either of them has ever noticed. That wasn't even the worst thing I'd learned that week, but it was the thing that started it. I heard Chelsea's voice first, low and businesslike. She's not going to notice for a while, Daniel. She barely checks that account, it just sits there. Then Daniel's voice, quieter, the voice he's had since he was 8 years old, and didn't want to get in trouble. I don't know, Chels. It doesn't feel right. And Chelsea again, flat and certain. It's not stealing if it's basically ours anyway. We just need the POA paperwork moved along before she starts asking questions. Then it's clean. I stood very still at my own sink with a dish towel in my hand, and something in my chest went from warm to cold in the space of one sentence. Not anger yet. Clarity. The particular, quiet clarity of a woman who has spent 32 years reading loan applications and knows exactly what the phrase before she starts asking questions means when it's said about someone's money. If you've ever stood in your own home and heard the people you love talking about you like you're already gone, you know exactly what I mean. Stay with me, this is where it turns. I didn't confront them that day. I want you to understand that wasn't fear. It was strategy, the same instinct that used to make me pull a client's full file before a single meeting instead of walking and guessing. I finished the dishes. I said goodbye to Daniel at the door like nothing had happened, and I meant it kindly, because some part of me still believed he could be pulled back from wherever he was standing. That night I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I went into the cedar chest at the foot of our bed and took out the folder Walter labeled, in his own square handwriting, just in case. Inside it wasn't just bank statements. There was a letter, dated the year before he died, that I hadn't read since the week of his funeral, because grief has a way of making even loving words feel too heavy to hold. Gracie, it said, if you're reading this and I'm not there to explain it, don't let anyone talk you out of what's yours. You built that parachute account with your own 2 hands, penny by penny, and it has your name on it and only your name on it, on purpose. If our son ever needs help, help him. But don't ever let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting yourself first. You taught half this town how banking works. Don't forget you know how to read a document better than the people writing it. I sat on the edge of our bed and read that letter 3 times, and somewhere in the second reading, the cold clarity turned into something steadier. Not comfort exactly. Instruction. Wednesday came fast after that, and I called an old colleague of mine, Ruth Alvarez, who I trained myself back in 2003 and who now runs the estate and fraud prevention desk at First Sequoia. I didn't call as a nervous widow. I called the way I used to call other branches when something didn't reconcile. Ruth, I need you to pull an account for me and tell me exactly who has access to it, and I need you to tell me the truth even if it's ugly. Her voice on the other end was crisp, the kind of crisp that told me she'd been waiting for a call like this for longer than I wanted to think about. Grace, that account is solely in your name. It always has been. Nobody's on it but you. But somebody submitted a power of attorney request 2 weeks ago using your late husband's old notary contact. And it's sitting in a review queue right now because the signature didn't match your file. I was going to call you myself tomorrow. I told her I was proud of that signature not matching. She said, I'm proud of you too, Grace. I always figured one day somebody'd try this with the wrong woman. That wasn't even the worst thing the paperwork revealed. Buried under the fraudulent POA request was a second document. A request to add a joint owner to the deed on my house, filed with the county 3 weeks earlier, my signature forged in a hand that was almost right and entirely wrong. Thursday, I sat in Ruth's office with the folder open between us like a hand of cards nobody else knew I was holding. She was clipped and calm the way professionals are when they've already made their decision, and are only walking you through the mechanics of it. We flagged the account. We reversed the POA request, formally on paper, with a fraud notation attached to it permanently. We notify the county recorder's office about the deed filing today, not next week. And Grace, I want to say this once and then I'll never bring it up again. You did the right thing catching this instead of confronting them in your kitchen. Kitchens don't have witnesses. Paper does. That afternoon I drove to the county recorder's office myself, folder in hand, the way I used to drive to a client's house when a loan needed a signature that couldn't wait for the mail. I filed the fraud complaint on the deed in person. I watched the clerk stamp it, and I felt something in my chest loosen for the first time in 2 weeks. Not relief exactly, more like the feeling of a door finally locking the way it was supposed to lock all along. Friday, I changed the beneficiary designation on the parachute account. Not to Daniel. To my granddaughter Emma, 7 years old. Held in trust until she's 25, with Ruth's institution as trustee. Completely outside anyone's reach until then. I want to be honest, that wasn't spite. That was Walter's letter, in practice. Help the family. Just help the right way. And help the one who never asked for a thing. By Friday evening the calls started, and once they started they didn't stop. Daniel at 7:50. Daniel at 9 o'clock. Daniel at 11:30. Chelsea at 7:52, then again at 8:15, then a text. At 8:16 that just said call me back. Daniel again at 6 the next morning, his voice thin on the voicemail. Mom, the bank called about something on the account, some kind of hold. Can you call me back? I don't understand what's happening. Chelsea's voicemail an hour later was a different animal entirely, clipped fast, already rehearsed. Grace, I think there's been some kind of miscommunication with the paperwork, and I really think we should just talk before anyone does anything they can't undo. Daniel again that night, quieter. Mom, please. Just call me. Chelsea's sister called once too, a number I didn't even recognize, and left no message at all, just breathing and then a hang-up, which told me more than a message would have. I let all of it ring through. Not out of cruelty. Out of arithmetic. I have learned, across 32 years of watching people panic about money, that the first 24 hours of a scheme unraveling are the most honest 24 hours you will ever get out of the people who built it. I wanted to hear what they'd say to each other before they remembered I might be listening again. Saturday morning, Daniel came to the house alone. Chelsea stayed in the car for 11 minutes before she followed him in, and I noted that too. The way you note which client walks in first, and which one waits to see how the meeting is going. Daniel sat where he always sits, the same kitchen chair he's had since he was 19. Mom, what's going on? The bank froze something. There's a note on the house deed. I don't understand. I looked at my son, my gentle, easy son, and I asked him one short question instead of giving him a long answer, because I have found that questions put the burden of honesty back where it belongs. Daniel, whose signature is on the power of attorney request from 3 weeks ago? He didn't answer right away, and in a family, silence like that is its own confession. Chelsea came in behind him, and she didn't sit. Grace, I think you're blowing this out of proportion. We were just thinking ahead. You're not getting any younger, and somebody needs to be prepared. I asked her a second short question. How much rent have you paid me in the 4 years you and Daniel lived in that guest house? She blinked, caught off guard by a number instead of a feeling. That's not what this is about. I told her. No. But it's exactly what this is about. She tried again, softer this time, the voice people use right before they think softness will work. We didn't mean for it to feel like this. We just didn't know how else to bring it up. I said. You didn't bring it up. You filed it with the county. That landed the way a locked door lands on someone who was already halfway through it. She apologized then, finally, but even the apology came in the wrong order. I'm sorry it looks bad before she ever said, I'm sorry I did it. I told her once calmly, the way I'd tell a client the exact clause they'd missed. Apologies in the wrong order are not apologies. They're negotiations. And I'm not negotiating. Daniel didn't say much through any of it, and that, more than anything Chelsea said, is what stayed with me longest. My gentle boy, sitting in his father's old chair, choosing easy over right one more time. I looked at him, and I said the only thing I had left to say. I'm not angry, Daniel. I'm simply done being an account nobody thought to ask permission from. They left within the hour. Chelsea slammed the car door hard enough that I heard it through closed windows. Daniel didn't. He just looked back at the house once before he got in. And there was something in that look I chose, for his sake and mine, to call the beginning of shame rather than the end of it. I want to tell you the part that surprised even me. 2 days later, an envelope came from Daniel. Not Chelsea, just Daniel. With a folded piece of notebook paper inside it. No return address, like he wasn't sure he was allowed to send it. It wasn't a real apology, not the kind Walter's letter would have called clean. It was closer to an excuse dressed up as regret. I read it once. Then I did something I've never done with a letter in my life. I didn't throw it away. I put it in the drawer of Walter's old desk. The one where he used to keep receipts he wasn't ready to look at yet. Some things don't belong in the trash. They also don't belong on the refrigerator. They belong in a drawer, waiting for the day someone's ready to actually mean what they wrote. The one thing I never froze, never touched, never even mentioned in any of it, was Emma's account. My granddaughter still gets her $100 a month, same as always, still doesn't know a thing happened, and if I have anything to do with it, she never will need to. 2 weeks after the worst of it, she came over on a Sunday afternoon and asked if we could bake something. And we made a lopsided lemon cake together. And she told me a long, meandering story about a girl at school who wouldn't share the good crayons. I have never in my life felt as steady as I did standing in that kitchen listening to a 7-year-old talk about crayons, like it was the most important dispute in the world. In a way, it was the only honest negotiation I'd sat through in weeks. That night, after Emma went home, I sat at the kitchen table with Walter's folder still open in front of me, and I wrote one line in the notebook I keep by the phone. The way I've written one line most nights since he died. I read it back once, out loud, to the empty kitchen. Because some sentences deserve to be heard even if there's no one there to hear them. That's not cruelty. That's honesty with a handle. The house is quieter now than it was 3 weeks ago, but it's a different kind of quiet than the one I lived in after Walter died. That quiet was empty. This one is mine on purpose, the way a locked door is quiet on purpose. Daniel calls now and then, careful, like he's learning to knock on a door he used to walk through without thinking. I let him in a little at a time. Not because I've forgiven the paperwork. Because I remember the boy underneath it, and I haven't entirely given up on him finding his way back to being that boy again. I think about that day in the bank lobby often, the cold coffee cup, the teller saying it twice. I understand now why I couldn't remember buying that coffee. I wasn't thinking about coffee. I was already, in some quiet unconscious way, thinking about paperwork, about signatures, about a folder in a cedar chest that was about to matter more than anyone in my family understood yet. If there's one thing I'd want another woman my age to hear from all of this, it's this. Nobody gets to decide your account is basically theirs. Not out loud, not in a kitchen, not filed quietly with a county clerk while you're doing your dishes upstairs. Paper remembers what people hope you'll forget. Keep yours in order. Keep your name on the things that are yours. And when the moment comes to answer, answer the way I did. Not with a raised voice, but with a folder, a phone call, and a signature that doesn't match. That night, for the first time since the bank lobby, I slept the way a woman sleeps when she has finally stopped waiting for someone else's permission to protect what's hers.